Why did Uthman burn other copies of the Quran? When the compilation of the Uthmanic Codex was complete, Uthman sent an official copy to each of a number of major cities within the Muslim world and instructed that other unofficial copies of the Quran be burned. Uthman sent to every Muslim province one copy of what they had copied and ordered that all other Quranic materials, whether written in fragmentary manuscripts or whole copies, be burnt. When presented without context, particularly by the unlearned, this act of burning takes on almost dark undertones, as though it somehow undermines the preservation of the Quranic text. However, for those familiar with all facts analyzed in the preceding discussions, Uthman's instruction is entirely expected, as was in fact an integral part of the history of the preservation of the Quranic text. The whole point of the Uthmanic project was to unify the Muslim Ummah on one Mus'haf that would eliminate confusion caused by the proliferation of different ahruf taught by various companions in different lands. Had Uthman not undertaken the burning of copies of the Quran which differed from the official copies and thus not eliminated a source of the disputes, the entire exercise would have been futile. There also would have remained the possibility of individual Muslims reciting from copies that contained scribal errors or contained the commentary of companions alongside verses of the Quran. Given that it would be quite unfeasible to check and correct each and every personal codex to eliminate the possibility of error, the logical solution was to simply eliminate those codices that had not been copied from the Uthmanic archetype. Perhaps this episode generates such confusion because book burning incidents in Western history are typically seen as a manifestation of condemnation or desecration. For instance, after renouncing Arianism and converting to Catholicism, the Visigoth king Ricard I ordered all Arian books to be collected and burned. However, in the Islamic tradition, one of the respectful ways to dispose of any text containing verses of the Quran is in fact through burning it. Ibn Battal writes, and Uthman's instruction to burn the manuscripts and copies of the Quran after his compilation demonstrates that it was permissible to burn books that contain the names of Allah or Quranic verses, and that it is a form of respect towards it and protection from it being stepped upon or discarded on the ground. Some copies of the Quran in the time of Uthman were eliminated in other ways, including erasing or tearing. Moreover, the historical evidence indicates that elimination was not the only outcome for other copies. Muhammad Hassan Jabal and Muhammad Mustafa al-Azami both note that another possible outcome was that manuscripts could be reviewed and corrected according to the Uthmanic Mus'haf. They cite a narration from Abdul Ala al-Killabi that mentions that he visited the home of Abu Musa al-Ashari, who was with Hudayfa and Abdullah bin Mas'ud, and there was a copy of the Quran that Uthman had sent along with the instruction to correct their own copies according. The compilation of Abu Bakr, which remained in the possession of Hafsa, was not erased or burned by Uthman. However, the compilation was later requested by Marwan bin al-Hakam, at the time the governor of Medina. Hafsa refused. However, when she passed away in the year 41 after Hijrah, Marwan retrieved it and had it destroyed. Marwan stated, "I only did it because whatever was in it was already written and preserved in the Uthmanic Mus'haf, and I feared that time would pass and people would start to have misgivings about this, Hafsa's Suhuf, or would say it contains something that has not been written." The result of the Uthmanic codification is that Muslims of all provinces began adhering to a single agreed-upon text in their recitation of the Quran, abandoning those readings that did not conform to it. Oddly, Shadi Hekmat Nasser refers to the codification process undertaken by Uthman as a failure because it was not able to produce a single unified reading of the Quran. However, as previously discussed, there is no evidence that Uthman mandated for Muslims to recite only one qira'ah. Rather, Muslims were allowed to continue to recite the way they had been taught so long as their readings conformed to the authorized text. While it is true that differences remain in the qira'at, there was now a common reference point to ensure that readings were sound, so long as a person was reciting according to the way they had learned from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and the reading conformed to the Codex. Their reading was to be considered valid. This removed the problems of Muslims rejecting the validity of other Muslims' readings. Nasser's assessment could not be any further from reality. The fact that every non-Uthmanic copy of the Quran on the face of the earth vanished with scarcely a trace is the greatest testament to the success of the Uthmanic project. Surely, after the Uthmanic project in 25 after Hijrah, Muslims everywhere around the world were reciting the same exact text, and this has continued up until the present, more than 14 centuries later. The reality of the matter is that the Uthmanic project is an astonishingly successful act that the likes of which human history has rarely witnessed. Al-Azami concludes, the unanimous agreement to dispose of or amend all earlier copies made Uthman's script and spelling the new standard. From then on, every Muslim learning the Quran had to conform with the Uthmanic text. Where a person's previous schooling was at odds with this text, he was not granted leave to recite or teach in that divergent manner. So what could such a person do? Attending an official reciter's circle was the simplest solution, to learn the book in accordance with the conditions laid and thereby regained the privileges of teaching. Attending an official reciter's circle was the simplest solution, to learn the book in accordance with the conditions laid and thereby regain the privileges of teaching and recitation. Uthman's unparalleled success in this regard is proof positive that his actions echoed the voice of the community. Thus, Uthman's instruction to burn or amend Quranic manuscripts that differed from the official codices reflected the community's agreement upon the Uthmanic Codex, rather than undermining the text's preservation. This historical event decisively secured it.